The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. For centuries, alien civilizations looked down on Earth as nothing more than a backwater planet, still struggling with its own wars, its fragile environment, and its endless internal disputes. To them, humans were noisy, reckless, and unrefined, a species destined to remain small, bound to their homeworld, never truly a galactic power. The larger empires whispered among themselves that if humanity ever joined the stars in earnest, it would be as servants, mercenaries, or scavengers, never as equals. That arrogance blinded them to the truth, because while the galaxy was watching Earth's chaos, it wasn't watching closely enough. It never noticed the long silences when probes disappeared near the edge of the solar system. It never questioned the sudden leap in energy production, hidden behind the smokescreen of climate recovery projects. And it certainly never realized that humanity, in its stubbornness and paranoia, had been working together on something impossible, something unthinkable. It began decades earlier, when whispers of alien presence first reached governments in quiet reports marked eyes only. A few grainy images of massive ships passing near Neptune. Strange radio bursts that didn't match natural signals. At first, officials argued over whether to respond with diplomacy, fear, or silence. But one truth became clear. If Earth was truly not alone, then humanity had no time to waste. All borders, rivalries, and grudges were forced aside, not out of idealism but out of survival. The great powers pooled their resources, the smaller nations contributed what they could, and in the shadows of deep space, a project unlike any other was born. It wasn't just a ship. It wasn't even a fleet in the traditional sense. What humanity began constructing was something so vast, so bold, that no other species had ever attempted it. Hidden far beyond Pluto, where the sunlight was no more than a faint glimmer, engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked on structures the size of planets. Entire hollowed spheres of metal and alloys, bristling with weapons, layered with shields, and powered by engines that could bend the fabric of space. To the galaxy, humanity looked weak, still arguing over politics and trade routes. But in the cold dark, humanity was secretly forging warships that could shake the stars. The secrecy was absolute. Only a handful of leaders and millions of carefully selected workers knew the truth. They were sworn to silence, living their entire lives within those massive constructions, generations passing without ever setting foot on Earth again. Each worker understood the stakes. The galaxy would never allow such weapons to exist if discovered. But humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to do the impossible when pushed to the edge. And now the entire species had placed its survival on this gamble. By the time alien eyes turned toward Earth again, the warships were already alive. Not in the sense of biology, but in the sense of purpose. Entire continents of steel rotated inside them, filled with farms, factories, and families. Artificial suns blazed in their hollowed cores. Their hulls could withstand the fury of stars themselves. To see them for the first time was to understand a truth the galaxy had never wanted to believe. Humanity had leapt centuries ahead, skipping stages of slow expansion and instead building titans. But humanity didn't reveal them immediately. The ships were a hidden card, a weapon kept close to the chest. Outwardly, humans continued to play the role the galaxy expected. Merchants, colonists, explorers. They spoke humbly in diplomatic chambers, nodded politely to alien elders, and never revealed the storm building behind their quiet smiles. The galaxy dismissed them as harmless, and that mistake would change everything. The first real test came when a neighboring empire extended its reach too close to Earth's colonies. The alien fleets arrived, sleek and arrogant, demanding tribute and obedience. The humans on those colonies radioed back a single message: "Hold position. Do not surrender." The invaders laughed, certain no human defense could match their armadas. That was the last time they underestimated the species of Earth. From the shadow of a distant gas giant, one of the planet ships moved for the first time. Observers who later described the event said it was like watching a new world rise where there hadn't been one before. The vessel drifted out of the dark, its hull so large it blocked out entire constellations. Energy flared along its surface like lightning crawling across a storm. When it opened fire, the galaxy finally understood what humanity had built. The alien fleet didn't just lose. It vanished, erased in flashes of light that turned their ships into molten fragments. The survivors who limped back to their empire carried warnings of a power far beyond anything they had imagined. But it was already too late. Word spread across the stars. Humanity had warships the size of planets, and they were not afraid to use them. The reaction was chaos. Some species called for alliances to contain the humans. Others whispered about surrendering before they, too, were crushed. A few even wondered if humanity had surpassed the natural order, if perhaps they had become something more than mortal. But while the galaxy argued, humanity remained silent. No declarations, no threats, no boasting. Only the image of those titanic ships drifting through the void, silent guardians with eyes like suns. What no one outside of Earth knew was that the warships weren't finished. The ones that had appeared were only the first wave, proof of concept. Hidden still deeper in space were even larger constructions, with weapons so advanced that even their engineers struggled to imagine the full consequences of firing them. And now, for the first time, humanity debated among itself. Were these ships a shield, or would they become a sword? Would they be the salvation of Earth, or the beginning of humanity's rise as conquerors? The answer wasn't clear, not even to the leaders who had set the project in motion. What was clear, however, was that the galaxy had been caught completely off guard. The species that everyone thought would remain weak had suddenly leapt to the front of the line, and no one knew what they would do next. And so the story begins here. Humanity stands on the edge of a new era, with warships the size of planets ready to burn across the stars. The galaxy watches in fear and awe, uncertain whether these giants will remain hidden guardians or stride forth as instruments of conquest. The silence of the humans is more terrifying than any threat, because behind that silence waits a power that no one truly understands. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond the farthest orbit, another warship stirs to life. Its engines hum, its weapons awaken. And the question remains, what happens when humanity finally decides to reveal all of them? The first sightings of the planet-sized warships spread like a rumor carried on solar winds. Every corner of the galaxy seemed to echo with the same disbelief. At first, alien governments dismissed the reports as exaggerated, the wild stories of defeated captains trying to excuse their failure. But the silence of Earth made those stories harder to ignore. No human representative stepped forward to deny them. No broadcast was sent to calm the galaxy's fears. Humanity simply let the rumors grow, knowing that silence was more powerful than any speech. Behind that silence was a history the galaxy had never seen. Generations of planning had gone into the creation of the hidden giants. Long before the first warship drifted out of its cradle, Earth itself had transformed. The old problems that once held the planet back, energy shortages, unstable economies, endless rivalries, had been pressed into solutions. The building of ships that large had forced humanity to unite in ways nothing else could. Solar harvesters stretched across Mercury, swallowing light and turning it into rivers of power. Massive asteroid mining operations carved metal out of the Kuiper Belt, redirecting entire rocks to orbital foundries. Entire oceans of Neptune's moon Triton were boiled into fuel. The scale of it was unimaginable, but humans never thought of it as extraordinary. They thought of it as survival. For those born inside the hidden warships, survival became a way of life. Children grew up in endless corridors lit by artificial suns, their playgrounds vast hangar bays where starships rested like sleeping beasts. They never saw Earth with their own eyes, but they memorized its blue skies from old recordings, carrying it in their hearts like a promise. To them, their warship was home, their family bound not by blood alone, but by the oath to keep humanity safe. Over time, they developed their own culture, one shaped by discipline, secrecy, and the knowledge that they were building something the galaxy must never suspect. Still, the weight of such secrecy was heavy. Not everyone agreed with the plan. Some leaders argued that hiding such power was dangerous, that humanity's best chance for survival was to step into the light and force the galaxy to treat them as equals. Others insisted that revealing the truth too early would bring every empire crashing down on them at once. For decades, these debates raged in hidden chambers, with no clear resolution. But all sides agreed on one thing. If war ever came, humanity would not be caught unprepared. And war was coming. The galaxy was vast, with countless empires and federations that had lived in uneasy balance for millennia. Humanity was a newcomer, still viewed as a minor player on the galactic stage. But the appearance of a single planet ship had shattered that illusion. For the first time, alien leaders spoke of Earth as a potential rival. Fleets began to mobilize, not openly against humanity, but against one another. Each empire feared what the others might do if they were the first to ally with or strike against the humans. The balance was crumbling, and at the center of it all was a species that refused to explain itself. The humans, meanwhile, carried on with quiet determination. Engineers worked tirelessly to finish the next generation of warships, each one larger and more advanced than the last. Scientists tested new weapons that could bend energy into shapes no alien physicist believed possible. Yet at the same time, farmers within the ships nurtured crops, teachers guided young minds, and families lived out their lives inside the hollowed shells of steel. Humanity had built not just weapons but entire worlds, self-sustaining ecosystems that could travel between stars. To destroy one of these ships would be to attempt the destruction of a small planet itself. The galaxy could not comprehend it. No other species had ever attempted to build something so impractical, so costly. Why would anyone forge a warship the size of a planet when smaller fleets were faster and easier to control? To outsiders, it seemed reckless. But to humanity, the answer was simple: trust. A single ship, massive enough to defend itself, required no external allies, no fragile network of reinforcements. It was a fortress that could carry generations within it, impossible to betray or abandon. It was the ultimate expression of independence. But there was something more, something no alien had guessed. Humanity had not only built these ships for defense, they had built them because they were afraid of something greater than the galaxy itself. In the earliest files of the project, sealed away from even the highest councils, there were fragments of transmissions. Strange signals recorded from the edge of the observable universe, repeating patterns that no natural phenomenon could explain. Some believed they were warnings. Others believed they were threats. Whatever they were, humanity had chosen to prepare for the unknown. The warships were not only a shield against their neighbors, but against something still hidden in the dark. Inside the ships, the mood was divided. Some whispered of the day of revelation, when the fleet would rise as one and announce humanity's true power to the galaxy. Others prayed that day would never come, that the ships would remain silent guardians forever. Still, drills were constant. Entire populations practiced evacuation protocols, battle stations, and defense maneuvers. Every man, woman, and child knew what to do if the alarms ever sounded. The warships were not just machines, they were societies trained to fight as one. The galaxy's spies worked endlessly to uncover the truth, but humanity's secrecy held. Those who got too close never returned. Some claimed the humans had built their own counterintelligence fleets, shadow ships designed not for war, but for erasing anyone who discovered too much. Whether true or not, the rumor alone kept many away, but rumors had a way of spreading faster than facts. Across the stars, ordinary citizens of alien empires began whispering in markets and ports about the humans. Some admired them, calling them visionaries who had defied the natural order. Others feared them, whispering that the humans must have made a pact with something unnatural to achieve such power. Still, others dreamed of rebellion, hoping that humanity might become a liberator against the old, stagnant empires that had ruled for so long. The idea of humanity had become larger than the truth, and that was perhaps more dangerous than the warships themselves. And so, the galaxy waited, holding its breath. Humanity said nothing, revealed nothing. But each day, more ships stirred in the darkness beyond Pluto, their vast silhouettes drifting slowly toward readiness. Inside them, generations of humans lived in expectation, knowing their lives would someday be tested by fire. And somewhere, at the farthest edge of the solar system, another massive construction was nearing completion. Larger than all the others, its hull glimmered with energy lines that pulsed like veins of light. Even the workers who built it spoke in hushed tones, uncertain if they were creating a weapon or something far more dangerous. When it awakened, the balance of power in the galaxy would shatter completely, and deep within the endless corridors of that unfinished ship, a single alarm began to pulse red. A signal had been detected from beyond the stars, one that matched the strange transmissions found decades before. The message was faint, but it was there, an echo from something moving closer. Humanity had built its planet-sized warships in secret, but now the question was no longer if they would reveal them. The question was whether they had built them in time. The alarm spread through the corridors like a ripple of unease. Red lights pulsed along the metal walls of the unfinished warship, and a deep, steady tone vibrated through the decks. At first, those inside thought it was a drill. They had lived their whole lives practicing for such signals, running through endless scenarios of what to do if danger came. But this alarm was different. It wasn't planned. It wasn't part of a schedule. It came from something outside, something real. In the control chambers, operators crowded around displays that flickered with faint signals. A message from beyond the stars, weak but undeniable, was repeating itself in rhythms that no natural event could produce. The engineers who had studied the old transmissions for decades stared in silence, their worst suspicions confirmed. Whatever force had whispered into human receivers so long ago was no longer distant. It was moving closer, step by step, like a shadow falling across the edge of the galaxy. The council aboard the ship argued for hours. Some wanted to reveal the signal to Earth's leadership immediately, demanding full mobilization of the fleet. Others urged patience, fearing that any sudden movement would alert the galaxy's other empires, who were already restless and suspicious. But patience was a thin shield against fear. The people aboard the ship had been raised on the story of those strange transmissions, told in hushed voices that something beyond the known galaxy might someday come. Now, that someday seemed to be arriving. Back on Earth, leaders faced a dilemma unlike anything in history. They had kept the warships secret to buy time, to prepare without interference. Now that secrecy was at risk. If the signal truly meant an unknown power was approaching, then hiding might no longer be an option. Yet if they revealed too much, the galaxy's empires might unite against humanity before the real threat even arrived. Earth's leadership found itself caught between two dangers, the visible rivals around them and the invisible force in the dark. Among the hidden warships, ordinary humans continued their lives with the unease of a storm building on the horizon. Farmers tended crops beneath artificial suns, but they worked in silence, listening for news. Children practiced evacuation drills as though playing games, but their laughter carried a nervous edge. Engineers tightened bolts and checked circuits with more care than ever before. Everyone felt the weight of something approaching, even if they couldn't see it. The conflict was not only external, but internal. Humanity had built these warships in unity, but now cracks were forming. Some captains believed the time had come to reveal the ships to the galaxy, to rally allies before the unknown threat reached them. Others feared that the galaxy would never accept humans as partners, only as targets. Still others whispered of striking first, using the warships not as shields but as weapons to secure humanity's place as a dominant power. In the galaxy beyond, the rumors about humanity's titanic fleet spread like wildfire. In the marketplaces of alien worlds, traders whispered of planet-sized vessels drifting silently beyond Pluto. In the military halls of empires, admirals warned their leaders that humanity had already surpassed them. Some governments began building coalitions, quietly moving fleets toward human space under the excuse of monitoring. Others sent emissaries. Cloaked in politeness but brimming with questions, humanity refused to answer. The fear was palpable, and with fear came paranoia. More than one empire began plotting preemptive strikes, thinking that if humanity truly had such ships, they could not afford to wait until they were unleashed. Caught in the middle of this storm were the humans themselves. Many of them had no say in the great decisions being debated. Families aboard the ships wanted nothing more than peace, the chance to live without being threatened by alien powers. Scientists wanted to understand the strange signal, hoping it might not be a threat but a call for contact. Soldiers, trained for years, wanted clarity. Were they to defend or were they to attack? Each group pulled in different directions, and unity was beginning to fray. One subplot began to unfold within the walls of the unfinished giant, the largest of all the warships. A group of younger officers, raised entirely inside the ships and never knowing Earth, began to question the wisdom of secrecy. To them, the galaxy was already hostile, and the unknown signal only proved that hiding had gained them nothing. They believed humanity should act boldly, reveal its strength, and force the galaxy to bend before it. But the older generation, those who remembered the fragile beginnings of the project, urged restraint. They knew how close humanity had come to collapse before unity had been forced upon them, and they feared that aggression would undo everything. The clash between generations was growing, quiet but dangerous, like pressure building inside the walls of the ship itself. Meanwhile, far from human space, alien spies tried to uncover the truth. A few managed to sneak close to the edges of the solar system, their ships cloaked and silent. One of them, an observer from a proud and ancient empire, sent back a final hurried message before disappearing. "The humans have built more than you think. They are not preparing for us. They are preparing for something else." That message sent panic through alien councils who debated whether humanity had uncovered a secret the rest of the galaxy had missed. But no one could confirm it. Humanity revealed nothing, and the silence was worse than any declaration. As the signal grew stronger, the humans studying it realized it carried structure, patterns within patterns, too complex to be random. Some thought it was a warning, perhaps even a distress call. Others thought it was a countdown. But no one could agree, and that uncertainty gnawed at every decision. Was the galaxy's fear of humanity justified, or were they all about to face a threat far greater than any war between empires? Inside the unfinished warship, the red alarm eventually dimmed, replaced by quiet. But the unease remained. The message from beyond the stars had been logged, analyzed, and archived, but it continued to repeat, faint and steady, as if whoever, or whatever, had sent it wanted to be sure it was heard. For the first time, even the most loyal builders of the fleet began to wonder if humanity was too late. If the warships they had built in secret for so long were not a guarantee of safety, but only the beginning of another kind of war. And so the tension tightened further. Humanity had revealed nothing to the galaxy, yet its silence was cracking from within. The alien empires circled like predators, uncertain whether to strike or to beg for alliance. The signal in the dark kept repeating, closer and closer with each passing cycle. And in the heart of the largest warship, the younger officers whispered among themselves, planning for a future where they might have to take action without waiting for Earth's command. The galaxy thought it was waiting for humanity to reveal its secret. But humanity itself was waiting too, waiting for the unknown to show itself, waiting for the first move to be made. And in that waiting, the danger grew sharper every day. The alarm had stopped, but no one believed they were safe. The silence of space carried too many questions, and none of the answers promised peace. The silence after the alarm was heavier than the sound itself. Inside the vast, unfinished warship, every step, every breath, seemed to echo with a weight that words could not explain. People tried to return to their routines, engineers tightening bolts, farmers tending crops under artificial suns, children reciting drills in the long corridors. But the unease was everywhere. Everyone knew the signal had been real. Everyone knew something out there was moving closer. And everyone wondered if the galaxy, already restless, would move before the unknown did. Earth's councils gathered in secrecy, debating endlessly with no agreement in sight. The older leaders urged caution, their voices low but firm. They wanted to wait, to learn more about the signal before making any rash moves. But younger advisors pressed for action, pointing out that alien empires were already mobilizing fleets near human space. They warned that if humanity stayed silent, the galaxy might decide silence was weakness. The warships had been built to protect, but if they were never revealed, they might never serve their purpose. Inside the fleets themselves, the conflict was sharper. Younger officers, born and raised entirely within the walls of the ships, felt the pulse of danger more strongly than those on Earth. They were tired of hiding. They were tired of drills without battle. And they were tired of living as if their entire lives were only preparation for someone else's decision. They spoke quietly among themselves, planning, imagining a moment when they would force the galaxy to see the truth of what humanity had built. The older commanders sensed this restlessness, but their warnings did little to quiet it. In secret, the seeds of rebellion were beginning to take root. Far beyond human space, alien councils met in their own halls of power. In one empire, a group of admirals pushed their ruler to strike immediately, to launch a massive offensive against Earth before the humans could fully finish their warships. In another, voices called for alliance instead, arguing that the unknown signal might be a danger to all species, and that humanity's strength could be the shield they all needed. Yet across the galaxy, mistrust outweighed reason. Old rivalries, centuries of suspicion, and the fear of betrayal made cooperation impossible. Each empire prepared in its own way, watching the humans like predators circling prey, waiting for the first weakness to appear. Back inside the unfinished giant, the engineers who studied the signal finally uncovered something more. The patterns were not random. They were growing stronger, closer, and more frequent. What had once been faint background whispers were now repeating in cycles that could no longer be ignored. Some of the scientists argued that the signal might not be hostile at all, that it could be an invitation. But others pointed to the energy readings buried within the transmissions. They weren't just signals, they were bursts of power, the kind that could only come from engines moving something vast. Whatever was sending the message wasn't just approaching, it was arriving with strength. The tension became unbearable. In the corridors of the planet ships, soldiers sharpened their discipline, rehearsing battle plans until their bodies moved like machines. In the artificial cities inside, families whispered their fears at night, wondering if they would ever see Earth or if their warship would become their only world forever. The leaders on Earth knew that at any moment, one decision could ignite a war not just with their neighbors, but with something far beyond. The young officers grew bolder. On one ship, a captain second in command quietly gathered support to take the vessel out of hiding, to reveal it openly in a show of strength. They believed that if the galaxy saw humanity's power, no one would dare strike. They argued that secrecy had already served its purpose. Now was the time for revelation. But in secret meetings, some went further. They whispered about using the ships not just as shields, but as weapons of dominance. If humanity had surpassed the galaxy, why not take its place at the center? Why not become the power that no one could challenge? The older commanders sensed the dangerous shift, but discipline was harder to maintain than ever. For the first time, the unity that had built the ships was beginning to crack. And with the signal in the dark growing stronger, the timing could not have been worse. Alien fleets drew closer to human borders. Reports came in of probes destroyed, of silent battles in the outer systems where no empire admitted fault, but everyone knew the truth. The galaxy was moving toward conflict, whether humanity spoke or not. And above it all, the signal grew louder, like a drumbeat echoing from the void. Then, without warning, a massive alien fleet appeared near the edge of human-controlled space. Not one empire alone, but a coalition of several, empires that had hated each other for centuries now joined by fear of humanity. They demanded answers. They demanded to see what humans were hiding. And they demanded it now. Their warships blocked the stars like a wall of steel and fire, a threat too large to ignore. The human fleet remained hidden. No warship moved. No response came from Earth. The galaxy watched in suspense, waiting for the moment when humanity's silence would finally break. And yet, deep within the unfinished Titan, the red alarm began to pulse again. This time, it was not just a signal. It was a warning that something had entered the outer edges of the solar system. The coalition fleet thought it was humanity making a move. They armed their weapons, ready to unleash fire. But the readings didn't match human ships. The energy was too great, the design too alien, the speed too impossible. The unknown had arrived, just as the signal had promised. In that instant, everything collided. Alien fleets, human fleets, and the approaching shadow all converged on the same space. Humanity's secret could not remain hidden any longer. The planet-sized warships stirred, their colossal engines humming as power flowed through their veins. Crews rushed to battle stations, their lives of preparation narrowing into a single, terrifying moment. Earth's leaders shouted conflicting orders, commanders argued over comms, and the younger officers prepared to act on their own if the older generation hesitated too long. The alien coalition hesitated between firing on humanity or uniting against the unknown. And the signal pulsed louder, so close now it seemed to shake the very fabric of space. For years, the galaxy had underestimated humanity. For years, humanity had hidden its giants in silence. And now, as a shadow from beyond the stars loomed over them all, the moment of revelation had finally arrived. The warships drifted out of hiding, their vast hulls glowing with power. Entire constellations vanished behind their silhouettes. The galaxy saw them at last. Not rumors, not whispers, but reality. Planet-sized vessels alive with light and fury standing between Earth and the dark. The galaxy caught its breath. Humanity's secret was no longer a secret, but the unknown was still coming. And in that instant, as weapons charged and fleets took their positions, the question hung in the silence of space. Would humanity stand as the shield of the galaxy, or would they turn their giants into a sword that could cut down everything in their path? The climax had begun, and there was no turning back. The moment the hidden warships revealed themselves, the galaxy seemed to stop breathing. Entire civilizations that had whispered of rumors and shadows were forced to face the truth with their own eyes. The planet-sized vessels of humanity drifted into the open, colossal and alive, their hulls glimmering with energy like caged stars. Even the alien coalition, prepared for a war of intimidation, fell into stunned silence at the sight. Yet before anyone could decide whether to attack, retreat, or negotiate, the true danger made itself known. The signal that had pulsed for decades now grew deafening, its patterns vibrating through every receiver, every sensor. Out beyond the outermost planets, something massive crossed into the solar system. At first, the readings seemed impossible. Energy output beyond anything recorded, structures so large they made even humanity's planet ships seem small. The unknown was not one vessel but many, an entire fleet, moving with the precision of a single thought. They glided through the void with eerie silence, their shapes alien to every database, their surfaces alive with shifting patterns of light. For a heartbeat, humanity and the alien coalition forgot their standoff. Every eye turned to the newcomers. Some hoped they were allies, others feared they were invaders, but none could deny the scale. Humanity had shocked the galaxy by building warships the size of planets. Now, something even greater had arrived, as if to remind them all that no matter how far they reached, there was always a higher peak. On Earth, panic spread through the highest councils. The warships were no longer a hidden card. They had been forced into the open. Their existence alone was enough to ignite galactic war, but now the unknown fleet had shattered all plans. Some leaders shouted for immediate alliance with the coalition, insisting that survival required unity. Others argued that this was the perfect moment to strike at the galaxy's rivals while they were distracted, to secure humanity's place before the newcomers revealed their intentions. The debate was chaos, and every moment lost brought the unknown closer. Inside the warships, crews scrambled to battle stations. Entire cities inside the Titans shifted into wartime posture. Shields hummed, weapons aligned, and engines roared with power. Yet unease ran deeper than preparation. For the first time, many wondered if the giants they had spent their lives building were truly enough. Against the coalition's fleets, they had felt confident. Against this new arrival, they were not so sure. The alien coalition reacted with equal confusion. Some admirals argued that the humans must be working with these newcomers, that this was all part of some larger plan. Others refused to believe it, insisting that no species could control a power that enormous. Yet suspicion poisoned every thought. The coalition had gathered to contain humanity, but now they faced something even worse. And still, the humans remained silent, their colossal ships holding position like watchful guardians, neither friend nor foe. Then the second twist revealed itself. The signals were not only growing stronger, they were being answered. From deep inside one of humanity's planet ships, an old archive of transmissions lit up. Unknown to most of the crews, long-hidden files began to unlock themselves, as though triggered by the arrival of the newcomers. Words in no human language scrolled across displays, symbols that matched the patterns seen on the alien fleet. For decades, scientists had studied the mysterious transmissions that first warned of their existence. Now, some realized the truth. Humanity had not only been listening, they had been chosen. The revelations spread like fire inside the warship's command chambers. The signals weren't just warnings. They were messages, directed at Earth, directed at humanity specifically. The newcomers hadn't come randomly. They had come for them. The crews reacted with shock and anger. Some felt betrayed, believing their leaders had always known and had hidden it. Others were terrified. Why humanity of all species had been singled out? And what did the newcomers expect from them? The younger officers, restless and eager for action, saw this as confirmation of their belief that humanity was destined for more than defense. They argued this was the moment to step forward and claim leadership of the galaxy. But older commanders felt dread, sensing that being chosen by something so vast was no blessing, but a burden humanity was not ready to bear. On alien worlds, the coalition interpreted the signals differently. To them, it looked like cooperation. If the newcomers were speaking directly to the humans, then humanity must have been working with them all along. Fear turned to fury. Already threatened by the humans' hidden warships, now they faced the possibility of an alliance between Earth and a power far beyond their understanding. In their panic, many called for immediate action, believing it was better to strike humanity now than to wait and risk annihilation later. The stage was set for disaster. In the void, the newcomers moved closer, their ships rearranging into strange, precise formations. Patterns of light flashed across their surfaces, rhythms that matched the signals humans had received for years. Some scientists aboard the warships began to weep as they translated fragments. It wasn't just communication, it was recognition. The newcomers knew humanity. They had been watching all along. Inside the unfinished Titan, one of the younger officers took a step too far. Using access codes stolen from an older commander, he activated the ship's engines without authorization. The warship began to drift forward, massive enough that its movement alone made nearby stars shift from view. His message was simple. Humanity would not wait. Humanity would stand at the center of this new storm, whether the galaxy or the newcomers liked it or not. The act split the fleet. Some captains prepared to follow, believing hesitation would only make them weak. Others prepared to fire on their own if the rogue officer endangered them all. The unity that had built the warships was tearing apart in real time, and no one could stop it. The alien coalition, already on edge, interpreted the movement as aggression. Thousands of ships powered weapons, targeting humanity's titans with everything they had. Warnings flashed across every channel, shouted demands for surrender, desperate pleas for the newcomers to reveal their intentions. But the newcomers gave no answer. Their formations shifted again, and energy readings spiked higher than anything seen before. The galaxy was seconds away from breaking. Humanity stood caught between enemies it had prepared for and something greater it could not yet understand. The coalition was ready to fire. The newcomers were arriving in force, and the humans themselves were fracturing from within, some ready to rise, others desperate to hold back. The tension was unbearable, every moment stretching like a blade drawn across the stars. And then, without warning, the transmissions changed. The newcomers stopped repeating the old signals. Instead, a new message pulsed, not just to Earth, not just to humanity, but across the galaxy. Every ship, every world, every sensor picked up the same chilling pattern. The message was simple, translated in 1,000 tongues, but carrying the same meaning. The cycle begins again. The words froze every leader, every soldier, every citizen who heard them. No one knew what cycle. No one knew what it meant. But the weight of it was undeniable. The galaxy was not facing a first encounter. It was facing something that had happened before, something that had already swept across the stars in ages long forgotten. The coalition fleets wavered, torn between fighting humanity or turning their weapons on the newcomers. Humanity's warships rumbled with indecision, divided between those who wanted to reveal their full power and those who wanted to hold back. And through it all, the newcomers loomed larger, their shadows falling over the solar system like a warning of what was to come. The climax was no longer just about whether humanity would rise or fall. It was about whether the entire galaxy would survive what was coming. The words, "The cycle begins again," echoed across every channel, every world, every ship. For a moment, the galaxy seemed frozen, caught in the silence before a storm. Humanity's titans stood poised like sleeping gods, their weapons humming with restrained energy. The alien coalition, still bristling with suspicion and fear, hesitated with weapons locked. And above them all, the newcomers loomed, an entire fleet of incomprehensible design, their formations shifting like pieces of an unseen puzzle. The rogue human officer who had moved his warship forward clenched his fists at the sight. His gamble had been to prove humanity's strength, but now the situation spiraled beyond anyone's control. The transmissions from the newcomers intensified, pulsing like a heartbeat through the void. And then, as though they had been waiting for humanity to reveal themselves, the newcomers acted. From their massive fleet, a wave of energy surged outward. It was not an attack in the traditional sense. No lasers, no missiles, no visible weapons. Instead, it was a ripple, a resonance that passed through the coalition's fleets. In an instant, hundreds of alien ships powered down, their engines silent, their weapons dead. Entire armadas drifted helplessly in space, as if some unseen hand had plucked the fire from their hearts. Panic broke through coalition command channels. Some ships fled blindly, others turned on each other in desperation, their systems failing in unpredictable ways. For the first time in centuries, the coalition's unity collapsed, their fleets unraveling before they had even fired a shot. Humanity's warships remained untouched, their shields held steady, their systems still alive, as though they had been excluded from the strike. On Earth, the council chambers erupted with chaos. The message was clear. The newcomers had not only known humanity, they had chosen them. The cycle they spoke of was one humanity had now been drawn into, willingly or not. But the question still burned. Was it salvation, or was it a curse? In the command center of the lead Titan, Admiral Ryan stood rigid, his jaw clenched. Around him, his crew waited for his order. They had trained for war against the coalition, but not this. His voice was steady when he finally spoke. "Open all channels, every frequency. They want us to listen. We'll listen." The screen before them shifted as the newcomers' patterns of light coalesced into something more recognizable. A form emerged. Not quite human, not quite alien, but something in between, shaped from energy and light. It spoke without sound, its words appearing across every screen in unison. "You have built what others could not. You have endured what others feared. But your war was never with each other. The cycle is older than your worlds, older than your stars. Each time a species is chosen to hold the line. This time, it is you." The words fell heavy, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Humanity had not stumbled into destiny. They had been drafted into it. The warships, the decades of preparation, the secrecy, all had been leading to this moment. The coalition was never the true enemy. The real conflict was something larger, something coming, something that had erased civilizations before and would test them again. But the coalition could not accept it. Their leaders, furious and afraid, declared the newcomers liars, claiming humanity had orchestrated the entire display. Even as their fleet struggled to regain control, a portion of them launched a desperate assault. Thousands of alien ships fired at once, a storm of energy crashing toward humanity's warships. The human titans responded in kind. Shields flared, weapons ignited, and for the first time, the galaxy witnessed the full might of planet-sized warships unleashed. Beams of pure energy cut through the void, tearing through coalition fleets like fire through paper. Explosions rippled across the stars, lighting up the darkness with a fury that left no doubt. Humanity had arrived as a true power, and the coalition could no longer deny it. Yet even as victory came, unease lingered. The newcomers did not intervene. They watched, silent and still, as if measuring, judging, waiting to see how humanity would respond. And when the last of the coalition's offensive fell silent, the newcomers spoke again. "The cycle is not war with them. The cycle is war with what comes after. You stand ready, but you do not yet understand." Before anyone could react, space itself seemed to tear open. Beyond the edges of the system, rifts formed, dark wounds in the fabric of reality. From them poured shapes unlike anything seen before, vast swarms of shadow and flame, their bodies bending light, their movements unnatural. They were the true enemy, the ones who had ended cycles before. In that instant, the galaxy understood. The coalition's hatred, humanity's secrecy, all of it was meaningless compared to this. The real war had only just begun. Humanity's titans turned, their weapons aligning on the rift-born creatures. The alien coalition, battered and broken, hesitated. Some fled, unwilling to fight a battle they could not understand. But others, perhaps realizing the truth too late, aligned their surviving ships beside the humans. Former enemies became desperate allies, fighting side by side not out of trust, but out of necessity. The battle that followed was chaos. The rift-born swarmed in endless numbers, tearing apart ships with unnatural force, ripping through steel and shields like fragile glass. Humanity's warships fired relentlessly, beams of energy carving through the swarms, but for every creature destroyed, more emerged. The coalition added their firepower, their smaller ships darting like wasps around the titans, covering their blind spots. For the first time, the galaxy fought as one, not for dominance, but for survival. Admiral Ryan's voice carried through the chaos, steady and unyielding. "Hold the line. We are the line now." His words became a rallying cry across the fleets, binding together species that had once only known fear and mistrust. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The swarms faltered under the combined fire, their endless numbers dwindling as the rifts began to shrink. One by one, the wounds in space closed, the last of the creatures screaming into silence as the void swallowed them. When the final rift sealed, silence fell again. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, broken ships, and drifting debris. Countless lives had been lost, but against all odds they had endured. Humanity's titans stood scarred but unbroken, proof that they had been built for this very purpose. The coalition, stunned and humbled, finally understood. The humans had not been their enemy. They had been their shield. And in that moment, something shifted in the galaxy. Suspicion gave way to reluctant respect, and respect to something resembling unity. But the newcomer's final words left no comfort. The cycle has ended for now. But the choice remains. Will you rise together or fall apart once more? The next cycle begins sooner than you think. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the newcomers vanished. Their vast fleet faded into the void, leaving behind only questions and silence. Humanity had won, but the victory felt fragile. They had revealed their strength, defeated the coalition, and stood against a greater enemy. Yet the final twist lingered like a shadow. The cycle was not over, it had only paused. And somewhere in the endless dark beyond the stars, the next challenge was already waiting. Admiral Ryan looked at the stars, his face etched with both pride and burden. Humanity had survived, but at a cost they had only begun to understand. The galaxy was changed forever, but whether for better or worse, only time would tell. The war was over. The cycle had only just begun. The battlefield drifted in silence after the storm. Wreckage hung across the stars, fragments of ships from every empire, reminders of how close everything had come to ending. Fires flickered inside broken hulls, while the faint lights of rescue crews moved between survivors. Humanity's titans loomed among the debris, scarred and battered, but still alive. For the first time, their full presence stood revealed to the galaxy. They were no longer whispers or rumors, but undeniable reality, planet-sized warships that had saved more than just Earth. On Earth itself, the news arrived in waves. Families crowded around screens, their eyes wide as they saw footage of the giants unleashing their power, holding the line against the rift-born creatures. Fear turned into awe, and awe into a kind of pride that felt new and heavy. People realized the decades of sacrifice, secrecy, and hardship had not been for nothing. The hidden farms inside steel walls, the children raised among endless corridors, the workers who had labored without recognition, all of it had been the foundation for this moment. Humanity had endured because they had prepared, and the galaxy had witnessed it. The coalition, once so eager to strike humanity down, now faced its own reckoning. Their fleets had been broken, their leaders humbled. Those who had accused humanity of plotting domination had to swallow the truth. They would not have survived without the very warships they had feared. In the aftermath, a fragile shift began. Messages were exchanged not as threats, but as acknowledgments. Some offered thanks, others apologies, though centuries of mistrust could not vanish in a single night. Still, for the first time, there was a shared memory of survival, and that memory carried weight. Admiral Ryan stood in the command chamber of the lead Titan, staring out at the field of wreckage. Around him, his officers worked quietly, speaking in low tones. Victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like survival bought at a terrible cost. He thought of the newcomers, their cryptic words about cycles, about chosen species, about the next challenge already approaching. The battle had been won, but the larger war, the true purpose of the Titans, was still out there, waiting. Humanity had not been spared. Humanity had been drafted. Across the fleet, younger officers who had once dreamed of using the Titans to dominate now stood silent. They had seen the rift born, seen what true annihilation looked like, and their ambitions burned away in the face of that terror. Power, they now understood, meant nothing if the galaxy itself fell. The warships had been built as a shield, and that purpose was no longer questioned. It became clear to everyone. Survival depended not on ruling the galaxy, but on protecting it. Among civilians, life began to shift. Those who had once seen the Titans as prisons began to see them as homes that had carried humanity through the fire. Children who had grown up in steel corridors now imagined futures not just as soldiers, but as explorers, diplomats, and builders. The revelation of the Titans changed humanity's identity forever. They were no longer the quiet world on the edge of the galaxy. They were the shield bearers, the species that had stood when others fell. That legacy would outlast the battle. But the greatest change came between humans and the galaxy itself. Where once there had been only suspicion, now there was something else. A recognition that humanity had earned a place among the stars. The coalition could no longer treat them as upstarts or threats. The price of secrecy had been high, but when the curtain lifted, the truth had spoken louder than any declaration. The Titans had not been built to conquer, but to endure, and their endurance had saved all. And yet, the unanswered questions remained. Who were the newcomers, really? Were they guardians, judges, or something beyond comprehension? Why had they chosen humanity, and what cycles had come before. The Riftborn were defeated, but the warning was clear. It was only a matter of time before the next wave came. Humanity stood stronger than ever, but their future was tied to a burden larger than themselves. They could no longer pretend to be hidden. They had become a cornerstone in a game older than they understood. Admiral Ryan knew this truth as he addressed his crew. His voice carried through every corridor of the Titan, reaching civilians, officers, engineers, and children alike. We did not choose this path, but we walked it. We were tested, and we endured. The galaxy has seen us, and now it knows. But we must remember, we are not weapons of conquest. We are the shield that stands when all else falls. And as long as we breathe, the line will hold. Those words spread far beyond the fleet. They were replayed across Earth, across outposts, even across alien worlds. Slowly, they began to shape something unexpected, a fragile hope. Perhaps unity was possible, not through treaties or politics, but through shared survival. The memory of the battle at the Rift became a story told not just by humans, but by every species that had fought beside them. In that memory, for once, enemies had become allies. In the quiet days that followed, the Titans did not return to hiding. They took their place openly in orbit around Earth, massive guardians that cast shadows across the skies. Their presence was both a comfort and a reminder. Humanity was no longer invisible. They were part of the galaxy's future, whether the galaxy welcomed it or not. The coalition fractured in new ways. Some empires pushed for closer ties with Earth, recognizing the necessity of cooperation. Others withdrew, fearful of both humans and the newcomers' cryptic prophecy. Yet even in their fear, none could deny what they had seen. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity was at its center. As time passed, survivors began to tell their stories. Pilots spoke of flying beside human titans and surviving only because of their shielding. Engineers told of human crews repairing damaged coalition ships mid-battle, refusing to let allies fall. Families from alien colonies whispered about how humanity's fleets had shielded their homes when everything else collapsed. Slowly, almost reluctantly, trust began to grow. But trust did not erase the shadow of what lay ahead. The galaxy had survived this cycle, but the newcomers' words lingered. Another would come. Humanity's warships, though victorious, were scarred, and their crews weary. They had stood on the edge of extinction once, and they knew they would stand there again. The only question was whether the galaxy would stand with them or scatter when the next rift opened. Back on Earth, beneath the vast skies where the Titans now glimmered like moons, children pointed upward with pride rather than fear. Farmers who had once cursed the secrecy of the project now saw the crops within the ships as seeds of survival. The ordinary lives that had built extraordinary machines began to feel a quiet dignity. Humanity had not only built weapons, they had built hope. And so the story closed not with conquest, but with endurance. The galaxy had been caught off guard by the revelation of planet-sized warships, but what truly stunned them was not just the size of the machines, but the resilience of the people who had built them. Humanity's secret was no longer hidden. Their strength no longer doubted. The war had been survived, but the future was still unwritten. As Admiral Ryan looked once more into the stars, he whispered a thought he did not share aloud. Perhaps the newcomers were right. Perhaps the cycle never ended. But if that was true, then humanity's place was clear. When the next storm came, when the next shadow rose, the line would hold. Not because of the steel, not because of the weapons, but because of the people who refused to break. The galaxy had seen humanity's warships. Now it would come to see something greater, the resolve of the species that had built them, not for glory, but for survival. And that resolve, stronger than any weapon, was what would shape the future of the stars. The story ended not with silence, but with a promise, carried like a whisper across the void. humanity would be ready.